Well, hi, it's wonderful to have you back with us as we continue with more Explore Tulsa.
Now recently I met our next guest when my wife's car's bumper, it kind of had this big dent on the back side of the driver's side.
Wait a minute, did you wreck your wife's car?
I'm not saying another word until I speak to my attorney.
Well, lucky for you, Tim at the Dent Terminator can do his magic and make it look like brand new again.
So back in 2003, I worked with a guy and he had a big company and we were doing a huge shop. They do like $1 million a month in Dallas. And he was training somebody to work and, you know, I'd trained a few guys, and so just making small talk, I asked him, I said, how's the training going with this guy? He goes, oh, you know, how do you teach someone to see what you see? And that little phrase right there was just like stuck in my brain for a while. It is a bit of a learning curve, and that's, you know that a guitar can be played, you've heard the music and everything, and then you put one in your hands and you realize how hard it is. And that's kind of the way paintless dent repair is. So before I actually started doing the dent pulling, I was painting. I was doing conventional, regular body work. And in fact, I owned a body shop in Oklahoma City in '89, and I had already scheduled a car, and the dealer called me and goes, hey, did you start on that car? I said, no. He goes, bring it back, these guys are gonna fix it without painting. I was like, what? Never heard of that, not gonna happen. And so I watched the car and I looked at it a couple days later and it was actually done. And when I saw that, I was like, ah, that's interesting. But from then on, I knew I wanted to get into it. And so then later on, a buddy of mine did get into it here in Tulsa, and he hired me, and I moved up here from Oklahoma City. Then video kind of came along, actually sort of by accident. I was training a guy and he trained too short of a time. So in other words, he only had 3 days, but he wanted to see what it was about. And I said, well, it's not enough time, but I said, if I video it, maybe it would be okay and I'll give you the video or whatever. And so with the video, he looked at it and he could see the monitor and he could see, you know, I trained the camera on the dent and he could see on the monitor, he goes, wow, he goes, I can totally see that. I wonder if you can fix the dent. And so basically I turned my head, looked at the monitor and was still pushing on the car. And from that birthed a deal called the You See What I See program, where I actually figured out, you know, how to mount a camera on the head, which is not great, but it did work, you know, and then I wore a head-worn monitor. And so whatever I was seeing was actually, you know, in the video was actually recorded. And since I was fixing it from what was on screen, the person watching gets the experience of this is exactly what you're supposed to see, exactly where you're supposed to look. It's kind of a neat process where basically what you do is you watch the top while you push from the bottom, and so you can actually see where you are even though you can't see your tool. And so you learn to watch for those reactions, and you just get better. It's really hand control and eye coordination. There are some things that kind of surprise me. There's a lot of myths about what we do. In other words, heat and cold. People say dry ice and things like that. Well, those will move metal, but we don't use them for reasons that it's too hard on the paint. But there is a process that's kind of intriguing to me, and I don't know how much it's being, you know, how viable it is on everything. But when I was painting cars, we used to take dents out with a torch, you know, so it was a certain application of heat that would actually make the dent pop, but it could only be a certain size dent. It couldn't be in certain locations, so it was limited. But here lately with induction, which is actually heating metal using certain frequencies and voltage and a little bit of magnetic thrown in there too, and I've actually seen that pull dents out. So I've not had my hands on, but a friend of mine is using it in New Zealand. His guys are using it there, and so we're kind of excited about that. Maybe it might be viable. I do believe that it starts out painting by numbers, and so if you follow the process, then it becomes an art form. And so can anybody do it? Anybody that wants to put their mind to it, I believe can. I think there's certain people that have an aptitude for it that can learn it a lot quicker than others. You know, if the guy wants to apply the skill, take the time to do it, then it becomes art, you know, and then you can call yourself an artist.